So as some of you may know, Vamana is one of my favorites, if not my favorite god in Smite, and over the past year he hasn't really gotten all too much love. But that ends today. In patch 5.23, Vamana received a rather big buff. Today we're gonna discuss the buff and talk about what changes come to his playstyle along with that and his builds especially, so we're also gonna talk about some Vamana builds. So what has happened and why? Colossal Fury is supposed to be a moment of high impact where Vamana can charge forward and lead his team, but he often struggles at accomplishing that goal. The bonus health is not enough to keep him alive through focus damage, and in many cases a single guard can invalidate its use. We are increasing how frequently the heal occurs and decreasing the amount to make his health regeneration more smooth. We are also adding a stacking health shield that will boost his survivability during combat without increasing his out-of-combat healing. Finally, Colossal Fury will now allow Vamana to step through players and player-made walls, making him much more difficult to block from a fight. So, the changes overall for Colossal Fury are: Vamana now also gains a stacking health shield every second equal to 0.6% of his max HP per 0.2 seconds. This phrasing is actually rather weird. I think it just means that it's 0.6% per 0.2 seconds. The shield fades when Vamana ultimate ends. Changes heal to tick every 0.2 seconds instead of every 1 second. Vamana still heals for the same amount of health each second as he did previously. Can now pass through player-made walls while his ultimate is active. Alright, so let's untangle this a little bit here because we have a little bit of conflicting information and the other one is a little bit messy. So what you get is you get per 0.2 seconds, 1% health generation and 0.6% shield generation. That means in 1 second you get 5% of your health back, and you also get 3% of your health as a shield that is active during the ultimate. Furthermore, you can walk through walls. But also, what is actually not included in the current ultimate description as of the time of making this video is Vamana can not only go through player-made walls, but also through other players. And this is technically a nerf, because a good way for Vamana to stick to an enemy is often blocking them off. Now you can actually kind of run through Vamana and hope that that works out better for juking him. So you can, for example, also try and be in the center of him most of the time, where you're like right behind the cone when he attacks you, and he may have a harder time hitting you than before because it's gonna be harder to block someone. I didn't find out about this until after I played my games today, and I was actually wondering during some situations in those games what happened and why I wasn't sticking to the enemy properly and why they juked me kind of differently from before. Something felt weird and something felt off, and I couldn't really point the finger at it at that point, but now after knowing what the change was, I definitely can. So this is something to be aware of, and while I think overall the buffs that he got outweigh these downsides, I would say, it's something that is still worth noting. This will sometimes have benefits for sure if you're hunting an enemy through a wave of minions, for example, but when thinking of Vamana as a frontliner, which he typically is, it can definitely also be an issue because enemies can just walk right through you and you can't really body block unless you're trying to body block projectiles. So if you're in the process of defending your backline, this is definitely something worth keeping in mind because body blocks can be very important for that. Now that I've pointed out the changes, how do they feel? Do I think Vamana will be broken because of this? No. I think this will be a solid buff for Vamana in whichever role you want to play him in, and I think especially during his ult, he will be more dangerous. But having played a lot of Vamana beforehand and knowing about his strengths and weaknesses in general, and having experienced multiple games today with different outcomes, I can with relatively high certainty say that Vamana, at least as a jungler, will not be completely broken, and most likely also as a solo liner will become a stronger pick, but will still have his weak spots. His weak spots, for example, are in his early game still. His early clear is very predictable, his early poke 2 through the umbrella ring, which is rather slow. His 2 that requires him to be on the side of the minion wave, and his 1 is a relatively easily interruptible ability when it comes to escapes in general. He also still burns through his mana relatively quickly, so especially on early levels this is something worth keeping in mind. You really have to manage your mana and get your blue buff when you're in solo lane in order to really work properly until you get to level 5 at least. Now the big switch happens at level 5, and that has really always been the case for Vamana, but now it's even more obvious. While Vamana's kit is in some ways lacking a little bit across the board, I suppose, the biggest issues that he was facing were definitely with his ultimate. Not necessarily so much that he was always being bursted down in his ult, but more often with the fact that anti-heal would counter his ultimate, and then he would just get less out of the ult overall to begin with, and that would make it very easy to burst him down. But if you played Vamana against comps that didn't have any anti-heal, you know how effective his ultimate could already be before the patch when he wasn't countered here. You get extra protections, you get a massive amount of extra power, you get your extra regeneration, and the whole thing lasts for 6 seconds with CC immunity for the entire duration, and you can also increase the duration further by being hit. Especially the power increase in Vamana's ultimate is so drastic that even before this patch, I would generally opt into a build with a little bit of attack speed over just focusing on early power first abilities, as the moment you go into the ultimate, this attack speed will be very noticeable in terms of single basic attack damage, as you get so much extra power. In return, you can kind of skip out on penetration a little bit more than other guards. He doesn't need it as much because you get so much extra power in the first place for your basic attacks, and that's where pen and power are somewhat equal compared to on abilities. With the shield added on top of that, Vamana becomes almost unstoppable in his ultimate. You can still kill him if he uses it too late. That is one of the situations where that definitely works. Anti-heal still counters it a decent amount. The shield is not completely insane. It's 18% of his health minimum. But especially when the Vamana builds a little bit of extra health, this can kind of add up. And what you will also notice is that you always have to chew through the shield first before you get to his health, meaning that often, even if he doesn't get that much of the ultimate, he will still come out of it with a lot of his health being returned to him, as you simply weren't able to damage much of that during the ult itself. In that sense, what changes about Vamana's playstyle? First of all, I think you will be even more aggressive with the ult than before. You will try and run down enemies as much as possible, and you will focus both your playstyle as well as your build more on the ult now, as it is simply more beneficial. And with that, the builds will also change a little. Vamana now really has two beneficial stats: physical defense, but also health, due to the fact that the health not only affects his regeneration now, but also his shield during this ultimate. So if you get a mix of those in, it helps with either build. In jungle, you typically still want to start with Assassin's Blessing. I highly prefer Ninja Tabi even more now, due to the benefits that you get in terms of the extra damage in the ult with the attack speed, though other options are fine too. And I also highly prefer an early Hasten Katana to have some decent pressure, some clear, and really chase down enemies that way. In solo, on the other hand, you can go into more tanky boot options as well, though I think Ninja Tabi is a nice choice too. And while the item start obviously depends on your playstyle, it will probably quite often be a Berserker's Shield or a Gladiator's Shield rush. And then afterwards in solo, you might also consider Frostbound more over Hasten Katana. You will often be expected to frontline more, and the extra health again is very beneficial now. I simply prefer Hasten Katana on jungle Vamana, as it gives him a little bit more attack speed and a little bit more early clear, which he doesn't need as much of in solo because you can clear relatively comfortably there anyways. Outside of that, his item choices haven't changed all too much, but the prioritization has changed a little bit. For example, Height of the Urchin is still a very nice item for him overall. Masamune is still a good item, even a little bit better now with the health. But for example, Void Shield goes up a little bit compared to Stonecutting Sword, as Void Shield comes with that health, which now helps you in the ultimate too. Likewise, Midgardian Male is now a better competition to Height of the Nemean Lion, even though Height of the Nemean Lion still gives you a ton of extra power and, depending on the situation, can still be the better item, especially due to the fact that it obviously also benefits you once again a little bit more in the ult now when you have that shield. But Midgardian's still a good option now through the extra health. Other options still remain good, like Witchblade, like the Crusher and Executioner specifically for jungle, like Winged Blade against a slowing comp, and then also a little bit more outlier items like Talisman of Energy that can be very beneficial for him, or even something like Spirit Rope and Mantle of Discord. He remains very flexible in what you can build on him depending on the situation, more hybrid, more defensive, more aggressive, or if you want to have penetration, or if you rather have a little bit more defense, all that kind of stuff. In terms of his relics, there are still the same options. Heavenly Wings is still very good on him, especially to counter some slows as well. Beats is sometimes simply necessary. Any team relic can be great, even as a jungler. And Blink is also an option that you can consider if you like that playstyle. It really allows you to start right at the enemy, which is nice, but at the same time often I feel that in late game Vamana benefits more from other relics, even things like Thorns for example. Whatever playstyle and build you're choosing, I think Vamana will be more enjoyable for you now, even though getting used to the fact that everyone can run through you will take a while, and we'll see if that actually stays on the game and if that was actually intended by Hi-Rez this way. And with that, thank you guys for watching. I hope this was interesting and insightful. If you're new to the channel, feel free to sub button with the bell, it really helps me out. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow, where we'll probably talk about Hades. DukeSloth, out.